Hey, this is Dr. Swanberg. I wanted to go over the week 3 assignment with everybody in the 102 class. In my virtual class, we didn't really have a ton of time to talk about it, and my online class definitely could use the guidance. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that everybody knows that this handout, the Print and Read Using Quote Basics, is covered in the Using Quotes video tutorial. So these two things go together. If you're going to do really the best job possible, you would open this, read it out loud to yourself so that it really helps it sink in, and then have it in front of you when you watch that video. And then there is another short video on quoting poetry, which is a little different than quoting prose. So we spend a little bit of time on that. So make sure that you're watching these videos maybe with this handout in front of you. And then I wanted to go into a little bit of depth on the model that I've given you. So in this assignment, you have a model, and you can copy and paste this model into a document to print it out if you want to. I'm going to make it a little bigger so we can see it together a little bit better. And I want to go over this model with you, really sentence by sentence, just to let you know what you're aiming for. And your goal is to make yours look exactly like mine, except it's about a different poem, and it talks about the theme that you are observing. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is have a topic sentence. Okay? That topic sentence should tell me what the whole paragraph is going to be about as specifically as possible. So it's kind of my main idea, and I want to start right out with it. Notice I'm not quoting yet, I'm not even naming the poem yet. This is about my idea, which I am using the poem to support. Okay, so my comment here, and it's arguable, but I'm going to use the poem to prove what I'm trying to say. Being poor can make a person just distrust other people. Now that's a controversial statement, but I'm going to use lines from the poem to back it up. So I have a short, clear topic sentence that tells you exactly what the paragraph will be about. And then I have a follow-up sentence kind of explaining what I mean a little bit. A poor person's trust can be earned, but it is often hard to earn. And then I take one sentence just to introduce the poem by its title. One poem that shows us this is The Poor. Now, the title of the poem is capitalized. Each significant word is capitalized, and then it's in quotation marks as well. Notice that the period goes inside the quotation marks. All right, the next sentence introduces the author. This poem is by William Carlos Williams, who was a poet and a doctor. Now, I know that from living. You might know that from my lectures, recorded or live. He was a doctor. Actually, he was a doctor through the 1919 Spanish flu pandemic that killed 6 million Americans, and that we keep talking about here as we're thinking about COVID. And then I talk about just one sentence about the author, and you can use what I just said if you want to, or if you know anything about the author. Like, this was an African-American poet, but you don't necessarily have to know anything about the author. You might say, this is an author from my class, if that's all you know. Please do not put in anything you would have to look up online. If you know it about them, you can use it, like if you saw a picture of them. But if you have to look it up, don't include it. Write something else instead. I like this poem because would be just as good. Now I give a brief summary of the poem. And I give, let's see, I have 1, 2, 3 sentences just giving a summary of the poem in my own words. The poem, The Poor, and again, it's capitalized and in quotation marks every time I use it, talks about how some people are reluctant to trust the town doctor. The poem tells us that the doctor has come to school to check the children's head for lice. At first, the parents resent him for this. So I'm making sure my reader knows what I see in the poem. So take a few minutes to make sure your reader knows that you have understood the poem and what it's about in general. Then we're ready to start quoting it. And here you see my first sentence with a quote in it. I want you to notice a few things. It starts with a quote integration phrase. The speaker admits he is. You could also say the poem says, the speaker says, it says, comma, quote. But we want to have the comma, quote, and the little phrase in front of it that introduces it. The goal here is to have it be nice and smooth so that when I read it, if you close your eyes, it doesn't sound like there's a quote, it sounds nice and smooth. The speaker admits he is constantly tormenting them with reminders of the lice in their children's hair, and they resent him for that. So it's really smooth, right? And notice that my sentence continues after I end my quote. And because I'm starting in the middle of a sentence here, for my quote, I do the ... here and the ... there to let you know that the poem doesn't start there. It's a way to not quote the whole stanza. And that's helpful. Notice here, and here, and those are the two. Okay, so I have 3 lines. I'm quoting lines 1 through 3. And these line breaks here, these little slashes, those tell us where I go from line 1, and then there's a slash, and here's line 2, and then there's a slash, and here's line 3, and here's a slash. You should not do this for more than 4 lines of text. If you're doing 4 lines of text, I'd like you to cut it down a little bit and talk about a smaller piece and talk about more smaller pieces. So break it into smaller pieces if you're quoting 4 lines at a time, okay? The citation for poetry is going to be in parentheses at the end of every sentence that contains a quote. So not just one at the end of the paragraph, but one after the end of the sentence of every sentence that has a quote in it. The format for citation for a poem is to say parentheses, lines, or line if it's just 1 through 3 if they're consecutive. If you're quoting line 1 and then line 5, it would be 1, 5 if you're not doing everything in between. That parentheses is part of my sentence. My period is out here, but it's not part of my quote. I don't put it in here. I wait till the end of the sentence for it. Okay, and then the next sentence is my own analysis. And be careful here not to just say, well, this means blah, 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 and paraphrase it. We don't need you to, I don't need you to tell me what it means. I'm a really good reader. I know what it means. What I need you to do is interpret why it's important. And that's what this sentence does. In fact, not only do they resent him, they hate him, right? So I'm giving that analysis, adding it to the poem to boss my reader around a little bit in what they see in those lines, okay? We know this because Williams says the quote, school physician brought their hatred down on him with those constant reminders. And then again, lines 3 through 5. So again, when you read this out loud, it is smooth. You don't hear the quote awkwardly chucked in. We've woven it into the sentence. We have quotation marks at the beginning. We have Williams says for an introductory phrase, and we have the citation at the end, followed again by a sentence of analysis. When the parents think he is looking down his nose at them because their children have lice, they don't like or trust him. And then another sentence of analysis, be patient with it. After he has treated them for a while, they begin to see his goodwill. Their attitude toward him begins to soften. So be patient with making sure you're in control of this paragraph, not the poet. You're in charge of telling me what you want me to see in the poem. Williams writes that, quote, by this familiarity, and there's that line break, they grew used to him, ... not the end of Williams's sentence, lines 6 to 7, period. And then more analysis. In fact, they not only begin to trust him, comma, they take him as, quote, their friend and advisor, parentheses, line 8, end parentheses, period. So there's a lot of picky punctuation here. And then I end the paragraph again with my own analysis to say what I think of that quote and to bring it on home and connect this last sentence back up to this first sentence up here. We see that the doctor's patience has paid off in building trust with his impoverished patients. When you are a doctor treating very poor people, it is important to remember that it may take a while to build trust. And again, we're bringing that back up to that main idea. Now, when you are writing yours, I want you to use this as a little checklist. Do you have a topic sentence that tells what the idea you are presenting is going to be? Do you have some patience with that? Do you have a sentence that introduces the poem's title? Do you have a separate sentence that introduces the poem's author? Do you have a few sentences summarizing the poem in your own words? Do you have at least 3 quotes from the poem, each with an introductory phrase and a citation at the end, with line breaks marked with a slash, each one followed by a sentence or 2 of analysis? So mine is this big, right? Yours should be that big. It should have at least 3 quotes in it. It should be patient in offering some summary before you quote. And so I want yours to be as good or better than this one, okay? And so this is the model that you're working on, and I want to make sure you use the model real carefully. Okay, so when you've got your draft, I want you to treat it like a find the differences game. And I want to make sure that there aren't very many differences. If mine looks different than yours, you have some editing to do. All right, I hope this helps you take care of the assignment for week 3. I'm going to put this video in week 3, and I'm going to go ahead and put it in announcements and email it all to you as well. Awesome. I hope this helps. Let me know.